Hello, it's my pleasure to welcome you into The Light from Ocean Reef, a podcast aimed at shining the Bible's light on our daily lives. I'm Dan Meyer, chaplain in residence at the beautiful Ocean Reef community in Key Largo, Florida. Before coming here, I served as the lead pastor of a Chicago area megachurch and as host of an Emmy Award-winning television news magazine. I'm a graduate of Yale University and Princeton and Fuller seminaries, a husband and a dad. And someone like you, I imagine, who's always looking for practical wisdom to make the best of life. I hope this podcast gives you some of that. Today we're presenting a Bible study on the book of Nehemiah that I've called Builders of Eternity. I hope you'll get a lot from this session that will help you to live and lead more thoughtfully in the various spheres of your life. Let's join the program right now. Well, we come today to the study of Nehemiah chapter 12 in its entirety. You may recall that chapter 11 was all about the dedication of the completed walls of Jerusalem, and the dedication not just of the physical structure, but of the hearts of the people to the purposes of God. Chapter 12 continues that story for us, and it's a mountaintop moment. It's one of those high and deeply significant moments that defines both the end of a long journey and something of the character of the next stage of the pilgrimage. Our individual lives, if you think about it, are full of moments like that. I think of confirmation, when kids come forward and confirm their commitment to the faith into which their parents have introduced them. They are both reprising all they've been taught and anticipating all they will seek to be as disciples going forward. College and high school commencements are like this as well. We're celebrating all of the growth and the learning of the days past and all of the promise of the future that these young people will be stepping into. Weddings are like this. We're marking the significant love that a couple already has, but also all of the possibility of the family they can be together in the years to come. Even retirement celebrations have something of this before and after this past and future character. These sorts of moments are a little less frequent in the life of a nation. They sometimes come at the end of a season of war, as perhaps the United States experienced at the close of World War II, and the greatest generation took stock of how they had been forged over the past years and the kind of country they wanted to build in the coming years, and the sort of world they wanted through the Marshall Plan to help shape as well. Arguably, we find ourselves at a moment like this in the United States as we approach the 250th anniversary of our republic. It's a chance to look back with gratitude at the lessons of history, at the distance that we have traveled, but also to hold fast and to clarify the great values and visions that will form our journey in the future. Well, in this case, the dedication of the walls of Jerusalem marks the end of a journey in which the citizenry of Israel, something like the U.S. during World War II, have completed an immensely formative stage of their national journey. Under the leadership of Nehemiah and Ezra, who are in a sense the FDR and the Truman of that day, they have progressively rediscovered their national identity and purpose as one nation under God, with a mission to fight against the darkness and to seek to bring light to the world. This, of course, was the original Abrahamic vision, as well as it is the vision of the new Israel that was common at our nation's founding, to be a light to the nations. They have also managed to recover a sense of civic pride and of personal place in the work of the nation's life. It's so important that the people here, as in our time, have not merely a vague sense of national destiny, but a sense of personal responsibility in helping the nation move toward the fulfillment of its great purposes. The people of of Jerusalem now have rebuilt the fortifications that made the city militarily secure. But more importantly, they had repopulated the city in a manner that required sacrificial migrations of key leaders and people groups. They'd reassembled a religious infrastructure made up of consistent worship rituals and feasts and the reading of God's word. And this provided the clarity, the moral vision, and the resource to enable the nation to be ethically and spiritually strong. There's a key historical lesson, I think, in this. Pity the nation that puts its confidence in mere physical walls. Think of Jerusalem before Babylon invaded them, and think of Babylon before the Medo-Persians invaded them. It's not enough to simply have chariots and walls, as the scriptures often remind us, but we must have a communion with our Lord that builds an internal strength and resilience that enables us to overcome all that will assail us over the course of time and history. In a sense, at the moment we are meeting Jerusalem, a new nation has been forged. It's been forged on the anvil of economic hardship and political warfare and spiritual struggle. The tyranny of disintegration, despotism, and discouragement that has been the recent history of God's people in this part of the world has been momentarily turned back. And a new era of hope and opportunity seems to lie in the valleys on the other side of this mountaintop moment. And what transpires now in this dedication of the walls, as we're going to see, defines the character of the next stage of the journey. Chapter 12 begins with another of those tongue-twisting and eye-glazing lists of names. As we know from the other lists that we've come across in studying the scriptures, however, there's immense significance in this particular directory. And I want to encourage you to read on your own verses 1 down through verses 26 of that text. I'm not going to drag you through the tongue twisters here, but read those words for yourself. And even though you won't find particularly inspiring this catalog, what we make of all this information really matters. You see, it seems to me that there are several things about lists like this that are in fact very inspiring and can be helpfully instructive to us. First of all, we're encouraged to remember and learn from the noble example of those who went before us in the journey of faith. In verses 1 through 26, the book of Nehemiah gives the people of Israel the names of all kinds of heroes from their past. For example, from the days of Zerubbabel, 90 years before. In verses 1 through 21, Nehemiah lists some of the priests, effectively the pastors, who have most faithfully served God and his people along the way. In verses 22 through 26, Nehemiah gives us the names of some of the Levites, who were the key lay leaders in the life of the community of faith, and of their families who have given so much to the service of the Lord and to his people on the journey of the nation's life. I can't read all those names without being reminded of how in the New Testament this sort of listing out of things is done all the time. Just think of the instruction given to us in Philippians chapter 4 and verse 8, where we read, "Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things." Make a list of such things. The book of Hebrews encourages people to learn from the stories of a long catalog of past servants whose faithfulness to God in tough circumstances will be an inspiration to us all. For example, in Hebrews chapter 12 and verse 1 we read, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, Let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. In their writings in the New Testament, the apostles Paul, John, and Peter frequently remind us to learn from the stories of those slaves, grandmothers, and all kinds of other luminaries who have run the good race in the past, leaving us an example, says 1 Peter 2 and verse 21, that we should walk in their steps. I think we sometimes forget the importance of doing this. In our modern or postmodern society, sometimes we can be so impressed by the technology and the knowledge of today, we can get so absorbed in looking at the future that we neglect to study the people and the accomplishments of the past. In the Protestant church, we have been so eager not to get caught up in the worship of saints that we've actually neglected almost altogether the value there is in knowing the stories of those who came before us. In verses 1 through 26, Nehemiah is trying to accomplish the same goal that, in a sense, Tom Brokaw was after he wrote The Greatest Generation. He was trying to help with the same goal that parents are always after when they walk their children past war memorials or grave headstones. Nehemiah is doing the same thing my grandmother was consistently after when she would insist that I sit and listen to some of the stories of my ancestors. I think back to my church history professor in Northern Ireland and how he would positively froth at the mouth with joy over the stories of long dead people like Tertullian, Augustine, Aquinas, Teresa, and Jonathan Edwards. All these people in our lives have sought to keep alive in the memory of the present the faithfulness of the past, that we might feel perhaps a greater responsibility and inspiration to live worthy lives for ourselves. Do you see the value of doing this yourself, of studying the people of the past, of encouraging your kids or your grandchildren to do likewise? I think there's a leadership lesson in this. Leaders understand the importance of learning from leaders of the past. And I know I feel a fresh dedication myself to that aim. It's why it's been a joy for me in each of the churches that I've served to learn about those amazing people who made the sacrifices, who stepped forward, who did the hard things to help build up the life of those communities of faith. There's also a second value, I think, to the catalog of names that were given here at the start of chapter 12. We're encouraged to recall the significance that a wide variety of people have played in the great work of God. I will make a confession to you that sometimes I feel awfully insignificant in my capacity to have a real influence on the great affairs of the world or the life of our nation or the course of the church with a capital C, and sometimes even the growth of my own kids or grandchildren. But when I consider all the other gigantic influences and the huge powers and the large celebrities out there, I will sometimes feel like what I do doesn't matter very much at all. Do you ever feel that way yourself? Well, here again is why we need the Bible to remind us of the way things really are, at least the way things are as God views them. In God's plan, the life of any individual, family, church, business, nation, or even the world is formed and steered not by one or just a few major influences, but by billions of different ones, some large, some small, but every one of those influences absolutely vital to the overall plan and progress. The mind struggles to find an adequate analogy for this reality. Maybe you know the old poem that ends with the line, "But for a nail, the kingdom was lost." Or perhaps you've read about the latest wave of studies in the arena of physics, chaos, and quantum theory that suggests that even the wing beat of a butterfly in Hong Kong influences the course of huge weather patterns in the United States. Perhaps the best analogy, the one that the New Testament settles on, is that of the body of Christ, the body in which every component is regarded as absolutely vital to the health and the progress of the whole. And if you're intrigued by that theme, see Romans 12, Ephesians 4, and 1 Corinthians chapter 12. I think this is part of what Nehemiah is trying to tell his people when he gives the long list of names that he does in verses 1 through 26. He's saying that there are all kinds of ministries in God's kingdom, and every one of them is significant. Only one person, you'll note, served in the high-profile role of high priest, but there were many others who did equally vital things, though they did them in unsung ways in the priesthood. In fact, there were so many priests that King David had divided their number into several different courses or groups so that only a segment were active in the high visibility priestly roles at any given time. It works that way around faithful churches too. At any given worship service, you only see a tiny portion of the staff there up on the chancel, and yet the vast majority of the people who really make the church move are out in the trenches, serving in some lower profile but equally crucial role. The guy in the pulpit gets a lot of the limelight, but the life of the temple or of the church would collapse without the person that makes sure the parking lot is plowed after the snowstorm, not so much here in Ocean Reef, but certainly in the parts that many of us come from around the country. Where would we be without the Sunday school teachers who bring their curriculum and their time? What would happen to the life of any community of faith without youth workers and hospitality workers and so on and so forth? Nehemiah's list also gives us the names of some of the Levites, which are members of the tribe of Levi. The descendants of Levi were a family who saw their whole lives in terms of glorifying God. For one thing, they were the most dedicated lay workers in the formal ministries of the temple. If you read the verses here in this chapter, you get a hint of some of the tasks that they performed. They were the singers, read choir members. They were the gatekeepers, read greeters and ushers. They were the temple servants, read bulletin stuffers and deaconesses and refreshment providers. They were the tithe collectors. Read those kind of folks who pass the offering plates. Every bit as significantly, however, the Levites provided the spiritual and the moral fiber to the secular industries of Israel, just as Christians are meant to serve as salt and light in the workplaces of the world. Again, only a small rank of the Levites at any given time were working in the temple. The rest of them were glorifying God in all of the other important spheres of daily life. In the parlance we use in the church today, to be a Levite was to see everything one does as either a ministry to the church or a mission to the world, but all for the glory of God. Regardless of how much press or stature the world may attribute to all of these different functions at a certain point in history, from the vantage point of eternity, every single role will prove to have been vitally important, including, I might add, the ones that you occupy. What are the roles you play in life? How do you think each role you play is vital to the larger picture of what God is doing? And do you affirm enough the roles that the people around you are playing? I think there's a vital leadership lesson in this as well. Leaders understand the importance of every person and role, and they seek to honor those appropriately. In verse 27, we read, at the dedication of the wall of Jerusalem, the Levites were sought out from where they lived and were brought to Jerusalem to celebrate joyfully the dedication with songs of thanksgiving and with the music of cymbals, harps, and lyres. The singers also were brought together from the region around Jerusalem, from the villages of the Netophathites, from Beth Gilgal, and from the area of Geba and Azmaveth. For the singers had built villages for themselves around Jerusalem. When the priests and Levites had purified themselves ceremonially, they purified the people, the gates, and the wall. I had the leaders, says Nehemiah in verse 31, I had the leaders of Judah go up on top of the wall. I also assigned 2 large choirs to give thanks. One was to proceed on top of the wall to the right toward the dung gate. Hoshea and half the leaders of Judah followed them, along with Azariah, Ezra, Meshullam, Judah, Benjamin, Shemaiah, Jeremiah, as well as some priests with trumpets, and also Zechariah, son of Jonathan, the son of Shemaiah, the son of Mattaniah, the son of Micaiah, the son of Zakur, the son of Asaph, and his associates, Shemaiah, Azarel, Milalel, Gilalai, Mai, Nathanael, Judah, and Hanani, with musical instruments prescribed by David, the man of God. Ezra the scribe led the procession, and at the fountain gate they continued directly up the steps of the city of David on the ascent to the wall, and passed above the house of David to the water gate on the east. The second choir proceeded in the opposite direction, and I followed them, says Nehemiah, on top of the wall, together with half the people, past the tower of the ovens to the broad wall, over the gate of Ephraim, the Jeshanah gate, the fish gate, the tower of Hananel, and the tower of the 100, as far as the sheep gate. And at the gate of the guard they stopped. The 2 choirs that gave thanks then took their places in the house of God. So did I, together with half the officials, as well as the priests, Eliakim, Messiah, Miniamin, Micaiah, Elionai, Zechariah, and Hananiah with their trumpets, and also Messiah, Shemaiah, Eleazar, Uzai, Jehohanan, Malchihai, Elam, and Ezer. The choirs sang under the direction of Jezrahiah, and on that day they offered great sacrifices, rejoicing because God had given them great joy. The women and children also rejoiced. The sound of rejoicing in Jerusalem could be heard far away. And at that time men were anointed to be in charge of the storerooms for the contributions, the first fruits and tithes. From the fields around the towns, they were to bring into the storerooms the portions required by the law for the priests and the Levites. For Judah was pleased with the ministering priests and Levites. They performed the service of their God and the service of purification, as did also the singers and gatekeepers, according to the commands of David and his son Solomon. For long ago, in the days of David and Asaph, there had been directors for the singers and for the songs of praise and thanksgiving to God. And I might just say, this is Dan speaking. Just go back to the Psalms and note the little notes at the top of many of the Psalms that are attributed to the choreography and or the arrangement of David or Asaph. So, says Nehemiah, in the days of Zerubbabel and of Nehemiah, all Israel contributed the daily portions for the singers and gatekeepers. They also set aside the portion for the other Levites, and the Levites set aside the portion for the descendants of Aaron. I hope you're getting the picture here. It is the people of God gathered together doing some of the things that God's people have always done most beautifully over time. They're giving praise to God. They're glorifying Him with all that they have. And they're sacrificing a portion of their own goods, the things that have been entrusted to them, or that they've been able to make with what has been entrusted to them, and they're returning it to the work of the Lord and to the care of the people that God is concerned for. And so, friends, thank you for all of the ways that you, even now, continue those marvelous rhythms of sacred service that we see laid out so plainly here in the book of Nehemiah. I hope you'll join me in the next episode as we finally conclude our study of what it means to be builders of eternity. That's a wrap for today. I just want to say thanks for joining us for this study. If you know of others who might appreciate the chance to listen in to this sort of content, please encourage them to go to YouTube or Apple Podcasts and search for the Ocean Reef Chapel channel. Once again, I'm Dan Meyer, and I hope you'll come back soon to enjoy more of the light from Ocean Reef.